An entire world is ready for you to start your career teaching the path to wellness.
Mastering the science of mindfulness.
And the art of coaching.
To help clients achieve mental, emotional, and physical betterment of life.
Through movement,
nutrition,
recovery, and regeneration.
Because impacting one person impacts a family.
Impacting a family impacts a community.
And impacting a community impacts the world.
Become an NASM certified wellness coach.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wendy Batts, and I'm here today with Ken Miller, and we are on Random Fit with a very, very special guest today, so I'm super excited about that. But before we get started, Ken, how are you doing today?
Well, I was wondering when you were going to ask Wendy. Things are great. No complaints. Not a complaint in the world, actually. I'm really looking forward to this recording with Dr. Jeff Godin.
Yes, and I would like to go ahead and introduce him so we can bring him on. But our special guest today is Dr. Jeff Godin, also known and referred to as Dr. J. He's earned his PhD in exercise science and kinesiology at the University of Connecticut and has his master's in exercise science and human performance at Bridgewater State University. Dr. J is certified by the American College of Sports Medicine, the National Strength and Conditioning Association, the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and has been in the industry for over 30 years as a fitness director, personal trainer, and strength coach. Dr. J is a professor at Pittsburgh State University in the Department of Exercise and Sports Science, where he also serves as the head of sports science and performance. He is also the head of fitness education for Spartan Race, and Dr. J has competed in and finished, which is crazy to me, over 30 ultra endurance events, including 100-mile endurance runs, Ironman, Spartan Beast, and numerous other marathons. And he was also in 2012, he developed the Spartan SGX with the goal of ripping 100 million people off the couch and steering them towards living an active Spartan lifestyle. So I would love to introduce and bring Dr. J on our show so we can talk to him a little bit more about how he has been able to do all of the things that we just discussed. So
thanks, Wendy. Nice. Hi, Ken. How are you?
Yeah. Good. After that intro, I'm like, man, do I feel like, I've been sitting on the couch. I haven't done anything in this industry compared to everything that you've done, Dr. Godin. So I'm really looking forward to finding out how you've managed to put all of this. And it looks like there's great alignment between what you've studied, what your research emphasis is, what you teach, and what you've done for the fitness and active community, especially through Spartan. So thank you for all you've done and your contributions to the industry.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Ken. I was pretty lucky, at the outset that I found kind of my passion early on, so to speak. Growing up playing sports and whatnot, my parents were nice enough to purchase for me a set of weights when I was about 14 years old. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, it's been a whirlwind. So thank you.
Well, I know me personally, when I looked at your bio and I see all of these major, events that you've done. And again, I know we're going to kind of pick parts, certain portions of what I read, but I personally try to do a half marathon every single year with my family, and with the intent to do the same. I want to get them moving. I want them to live an active and healthy lifestyle. But I'll tell you, I ran one marathon one time and vowed I would never do that again because my body was like, nope, this is not for you. So how do you get started? I mean, I know that obviously you've been in the fitness industry, you were a fitness director and everything, but how do you literally go from, I'm going to go run a couple miles to, let me do 100-mile endurance run? Or how do you get to that point?
Yeah, well, it's baby steps. You don't eat an elephant all at once. You take small bites, and over time, eventually you finish it off. So our approach to training was the same way. I never saw myself as a runner either, or as really as an endurance athlete. Growing up, I played football, played ice hockey. When I started personal training in Boston, I was mostly involved in weight training and working with athletes. I ran, mostly, just to kind of stay healthy, and I would run a couple of miles, but I really didn't love it, so to speak. But I had a series of events that happened. My wife happened to get into an accident where she was hospitalized, broke her leg, and as a result of that, the doctor. She broke her femur is what happened. And after the surgery to kind of put her back together, the doctor said, well, one thing you want to keep in mind is that you might not be able to run anymore. You might not be able to teach the group exercise that you usually do. So it's going to be a long road to recovery. Well, when you tell my wife she can't do something, she immediately doubles down and proves everybody wrong. So as kind of part of that recovery process, we set a goal from the year of the accident that we were going to run our first marathon. And after that, it just kind of grew. We got bitten by the bug and just wanted to do more.
So I have a question. When you think about the process, right? So with her, she's somebody that just does, and I know a couple people like that. Wendy, you might know a couple too, that, you tell them they can't do something. They want to do everything to prove you wrong. So how do you make that leap? Again, you go from, you're in a rehab environment, you're now just trying to get back to, quote unquote, a normal life. And you now far supersede even that when you start doing these, because and I've done my share of getting off the couch. It's like, oh man, I'm going to sign up for this race to keep me in shape, keep me tuned up. And, next thing I know, it's like, man, I got a race in 4 days. I guess I should do at least a 4-mile run before I do that half marathon, but baby steps, right? But how do you make that transition now from running to now adding obstacles and climbing things and going under things and scaling walls? Because it's pretty fun, and I'd love for everybody to at least do a sprint. I know you're going to get into the races in a little bit, but how do you get somebody to go now from just let's run down the road, let's go 5K, 10K, half marathon, 50K, to now let's do other stuff while we're running?
Yeah, well, that's the fun part of it, is that once you start into it, you set that first goal of running a 5K and you finish it and you feel pretty good and you feel accomplished, you feel empowered by it. And then you're looking for that next thing. You know what? I did a 5K. What's next? Let's try a 10K. Well, that felt pretty good too. And then you do a half marathon, and then you do a marathon, and then it builds. The way that I stay consistent with this is I keep signing up for my next event. I'm always kind of looking for that next level of, what can I, how can I challenge myself? What's the next level of challenge? And for a lot of people, it's that obstacle race. The running is fun, especially on the trails. Most of the running that I do is on trails and in the mountains. And I find that to be way more fun than running on the road. And I know a lot of people are a little bit intimidated running out in the woods. There's more risk involved in it. There's rocks, there's roots, there's the potential of encountering a moose or a bear, which has happened. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking. So most people would just train on the roads and whatnot. But that can get boring. You're looking out for traffic, you're pounding the pavement, it hurts your joints a little bit. And now, what Spartan Race has done is it's taken it out onto the trails. More people are getting involved in there, and then adding the obstacles. Actually, like a lot of people that are into the obstacle racing, they're there for the obstacles mostly, not necessarily for the running. When we first started the Spartan SGX, we included some stuff on endurance training, but mostly because we felt like, to preach to the choir, so to speak, we had to address the obstacles mostly. And that's what people really love about it. But it is like, for anyone that's a runner, it is that next level of challenges to now let's throw in some climbing over walls, climbing ropes. And it's really the marriage of like total fitness. It's not just cardiorespiratory endurance. It's not just strength. It's not just muscular endurance. It's a little bit of everything. You really have to have total fitness in order to do these types of races. And I think that's the best approach to training and a healthy lifestyle.
Awesome. Well, those of you guys that are just joining Wendy Batts and Ken Miller on Random Fit, we have a special guest, Dr. Jeff Godin, and he's talking to us a little bit about how he's made his way from running 2 miles or so all the way up to these unbelievable amounts of mileage, as well as the endurance racing that he's doing. And of course, we talked about how we got into it. But, Dr. J, can you kind of tell us a little bit more? We've kind of hit and we've mentioned the word Spartan, but can you tell our listeners, like, what is Spartan? Like, if you're talking about Spartan, is it just running with obstacles? Is there more to it?
Yeah, it's mostly just running with obstacles. They have different distance events, so they're shorter races. They have a stadion that is run in stadium. So, for example, here in Boston, we have a race in Fenway Park where you're running up and down the bleachers, climbing over walls, climbing ropes, doing the monkey bars, various obstacles that we have to accomplish. So that's a nice gateway into this sport, so to speak, because it's less of the elements involved. It's not on trails. It's in a stadium. It's pretty predictable. The next level from that is the Spartan Sprint, which is a 5K distance done on trails, done outside. Most often it's done in, kind of technical terrain and in hilly or mountainous environments with the same thing with obstacles, mountain wall climbs, rope climbs, monkey bars, you name it, they have it. They have heavy obstacles like the Atlas stone carry and the tire flip. So it really challenges in a lot of ways. And then the next step from that is the Spartan Super, which is a 10K distance. And now the Sprint has 20 obstacles. The Super has 25. And then the next one is the Beast, which is basically a half marathon with 30 obstacles. And then we have the Ultra Beast. That's a full-on ultra marathon, 50K, 60 plus obstacles. Those are brutal. Anyone that finishes those is top-notch badass in my book.
I'll say that there is something for everybody, because I've done the 10K and the stadium over here where I live in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area. So I think it was then AT&T Park. Yeah. And they have you have your corrals, and again, this is my own personal experience in running. My first Spartan was that stadium run, and you start off with a bear crawl. And you know how in stadiums where you have the ramps that you for the exit and the entrance. Well, you start off with a bear crawl up 3 of those ramps, and they spin the twine, so it's maybe 2 feet tall, maybe. Yeah. And you're bear crawl, and then as soon as you get to the top of the ramp, then you have this wall you had to scale, right? They have a little, I don't know, it's a 2-inch ledge that you can hold on to and then put your toes on. But then from there, it's just like what you're saying. You're going up and down stadiums. You're carrying these sandbags up, up a row, down a row. But I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that, especially because it was my first obstacle course, is that you look at these pictures and, not that, as anything magnificent, but you're climbing this rope. And when you look at the scale, I remember looking at the rope thinking, I haven't climbed a rope since junior high school. Right. And they have the knotted ropes and then the straight ropes. But then when you look at the picture, it's like, and then you remember the feeling of looking at that rope and going, just take your breath and just go for it, because that's all you can do, because you're not going to stand there looking at it for 5 minutes. But then when you see the pictures, because they have those photographers and just capturing moments for all the different obstacles, you're just like, wow, I did that. And, I was in my late 30s when I first did my first obstacle course. But for anybody that hasn't done it, I think a way of dipping your foot in the pool, so to speak, is try the stadium run or that 5K, because it looks intimidating, and if you haven't done those things in a while, and gym workouts aren't the same as obstacle course workouts. The only way to do it is to actually do it. You can prepare as much, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on preparation, but I say dip your foot in the pool, try something new, challenge yourself, because when you look at those pictures, when you have your support system that are there cheering you on, and you see them in the crowd or as you run by them, it's no greater feeling than at the end of the day, you're eating your your cheeseburger and fries because you deserved it after putting your body through all the rigor of doing the obstacle course race. But I say try the stadium run. I mean, it's a good way to just
it's a lot of fun. And,
yeah.
It's empowering is what it is. And, that's the real reason why I got into it. I mean, this might be a little bit off track, but, when we did our first Spartan race, it was sometime in 2010, 2011. It was when Spartan was first coming about. And it was actually my sister-in-law that had got us into it. My wife and I were training for a 100-mile race, ultra marathon. And she said, "Oh, why don't you come do this race with us? It's something new. It's one of these mud runs, is what she called it." And we're like, "Yeah, know what? That sounds good." We actually, the morning we got up and we went out for a 30-mile run, and then we went and did this Spartan race. We'd never heard of it before. We did it, and it kicked our ass so hard that we were like, man, like it was only a 5K, but we are exhausted and beat up from it. But, when we're looking at each other, my wife and I and her sister-in-law and her husband, we're looking at each other and we're all smiling and laughing. And we looked around at the crowd and everybody was the same way. Everyone's muddy, drenched, maybe a little bit of blood on their elbows from, crawling underneath the barbed wire, but everyone's laughing, having a good time. We said, man, this is something magic here because everyone has just gone through the same experience. Everyone is feeling empowered by it. Everyone wants to do a little bit better. Everyone, the conversation was like, oh man, I struggled getting over the wall or trying to do the burpees or the box jumps. That was brutal. I got to get better at that. And so it empowers you to want to do a little bit better and empowers you to want to grow and do more. So, if any, I love encouraging people to try this. People don't because they're like, oh, I'm not in shape enough for that. Well, you know what? You sign up for this thing that's 8 weeks down the road. That gives you plenty of time to prepare for it. And now it's that carrot in front of you that if I don't prepare properly for this, I'm going to be in trouble. So it motivates people to kind of stick with the routine a little bit.
And I'll say that with all of that, you are sharing the same experience. So what you just shared with you and your wife and your sister-in-law, and you're all having a good time. What's the saying? You have to embrace the suck, right? You have to accept that this is what's happening. So you might as well have fun. But I'll just say that one of the more awesome parts of the day was the fact that when you got stuck, when you were having trouble with an obstacle, there was either somebody behind you saying, they're clapping, you got this, just keep going, pull harder, just kick, they're even giving you technique, advice like throw your leg over, or there's somebody in front of you, they're looking back and they're saying, come on, you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. So that was one of the great parts of the day is that, you have these total strangers around you that's supporting you and you're sharing in the moment, but, you're all trying to accomplish the same goal. And that is, for one, you're challenging your body, you're having fun, and, you high fives with so many strangers, but on that day, at that time, whoever's in front of you, you guys are teammates.
Yeah. Spartan community is strong,
Yes.
very supportive. Everybody, there's some people that are racing it for a time, but by far the majority of the people are just out there for the experience and for some adventure, and everyone is supporting each other. You see all different types of people from, elite athlete looking people to just your average Joe. And, everyone's having the same experience and everyone's supporting each other. Everyone's trying the same stuff. So it's great.
Such good information. And it just, again, I think I would enjoy that way more. I have not done an adventure race. My husband actually just did one a couple of months ago and came back just a muddy mess with a huge smile and his little, his medal for finishing and completing it. And he was like, that was amazing. But, and those of you guys that are just joining Ken Miller and I on Random Fit, we're here with Dr. J talking about, Spartan races and endurance races and obstacle racing and just how fun it really can be with such a huge community. But, Dr. J, you're talking about this stuff. And again, I find it fascinating to know where you started, because again, I coming from a fitness background, being, a personal trainer by trade, kind of merge into different things and, accidentally start falling in love with certain components of exercise and things that I want to personally focus on for my own health and journey. But, how do you go from doing all of this to now being the head of, of fitness education for Spartan? Because, it's different to be like on the inside doing these adventure races, but how do you get to that level, and what exactly do you do in that capacity?
Yeah, so after that first race that we did out here in Amesbury, Massachusetts, we had we're walking around kind of the venue afterwards, and we ran across kind of an old friend of ours. Before this, we were doing some other types of adventure races that involved running, mountain biking, and kayaking. And his name was Brian Duncanson. And he, so we saw him, we were like talking to him, and he's like, yeah, you know what? I helped put this event on with Joe DeSena, right? So we didn't really know much about the organizers, but we had met Brian before through these adventure races. And Joe DeSena, I had already participated in a couple of death races prior to this. And so I knew Joe from that at the time he was running an organization. It was called Peak Races, and that evolved into the Spartan Race. Maybe later we'll talk about the death race, but the Spartan Race has kind of evolved from that death race. And so, talking to Brian, we're like, yeah, this is such a great thing. And it's such a inspirational and empowering type of activity and event that, I can just see like, thousands of people getting involved in this and really moving the needle on getting people off the couch and becoming physically active. And so shortly after that, I had a conversation with, Joe DeSena. He was like, because he knew a little bit about my background. He's like, how can we get more trainers kind of involved in this, get them involved in, helping, train people for the races, helping to promote it. And I said, know what we should do? You could start up like a continuing education program, like USA Triathlon has like a certification for triathlon coaches. You could do something similar to that. So he loved the idea, and he handed me the ball, and he said, Dr. J, why don't you go ahead and run with it? And so I reached out to two people. The first one was my wife, because hardest worker I know, most organized person I know. Obviously, I'm going to need a lot of help in that area. And then former student of mine, Joe DeStefano. And so, we racked our brains. We came up with it wasn't going to be educational. It was going to be more like an audition. Like, you say you're a great trainer, you say you live the Spartan lifestyle. Why don't you come and prove it? And so I came up with this 300 question exam, multiple choice, and then 2 hours of essay. And then they had a practical exam that they had to do. It went over the course of 2.5 days. At the end of it, no one passed it. So we went back to the drawing board. We were like, we're not going to really move the needle if we don't have any coaches. So that's when we came up with the educational part of it and developed the Spartan SGX and turned it into a weekend of education rather than just like we really put them through the ringer, not only with the testing part of it, but the physical aspect of it too. But but now it's more educational.
So just to kind of piggyback off of that, then when you're talking about, you're training trainers, I mean, is it easy for, our listeners? A lot of these guys are interested, but again, there's the fear factor, like you guys talked about. What if I can't do this obstacle, or what about this? I mean, are there trainers nationwide where you look up, Spartan trainer to help you prepare for these races? Is it just that simple?
Yeah, absolutely. We have on the Spartan Race webpage, they have 3 areas. They have race, train, and shop. So the race link brings you to all the races. The training has like some training tips on it, and also has a link to all of the certified coaches. And my fingers are in quotes for certified. It's a continuing education program. So it's not like like a NASM certification. It's not a primary certification, we'll call it. But there's a link to all the people that have come through the course. You can find them in your local area. A lot of gyms now have, have added obstacles, some of the common ones, like at least have a wall in their gym or monkey bars or rope climb, so they can teach people technique on it, as well as train them physically for the events. And it's worldwide too. We have the races are worldwide, and we have coaches all over the world.
Oh, nice. Now, I do want to circle back, when it comes to the races that we were talking about. Now, you mentioned, I know Wendy's thinking the same thing. Now, you said death race, right? So now, right when you said that, I mean, I've read it, but I'd love to hear it from you. What is the death race?
Well, the waiver we signed was just had one statement. It said you may die, and then you sign off on it. It wasn't, I didn't come close to death, but at times I felt like it. This was the year after we had done the Leadville 100. I thought I was a badass, and I thought there wasn't anything that I was going to be able to do, and so I, looking through the internet, looking for that next challenge, I've run 100 miles now. What's next? So I stumbled across the death race, and it intrigued me and kind of sucked me in. And I said, I'm going to give that a shot. I thought, if I could run 100 miles, I can do this race. And it was advertised as like an ultra event. It was going to be, 48 hours. In my mind, I'm doing the math. I'm like, well, I've run for 30 hours. I can do 48. I get there, and it's not anything that I expected. Right from the get-go, the race was supposed to start at 4 a.m. on a Saturday. We get there at 5 p.m. on Friday night. They say, meet us here at 8 o'clock because we're gonna take you around the course and kind of show you what it looks like and give you some information. Well, we get there, and they take us up the mountain. They break us up into groups. We had to show up with certain equipment. We had to show up with $50 worth of pennies. It was a bag of onions. I forget how heavy it was, but it was like a big sack of onions that we had to bring with us. And then some other gear. So, we had a lot of weight in our backpack, and we had a Lowe's bucket, and that's where I put the pennies. So each group was assigned a big wooden bridge, and I think it was 6 of us in a group, and we're carrying this bridge the rest of the way up the mountain. We went down the mountain, back up the mountain with it, still carrying $50 worth of pennies, and all the stuff from our backpack. These were bridges that they were putting down on the mountain for mountain bikers. So there was trails, and we put them down to kind of bridge streams and whatnot. And, so we did that basically until 4 a.m. in the morning. And they said, okay, now the race is going to start. And at that point, I was spent. I did the next challenge, which was to get back up the mountain. And after that, I dropped out. I was just like, man, I was not ready for this. That bridge was heavy. The pennies were heavy. Really woke me up that all the endurance training I'd been doing, although my cardio was good, I lost a lot of strength. I didn't keep up with that. And that really changed my perspective on how to train endurance athletes. Was like, you just can't run, bike, and swim. You really need to add some weight training in there, because you really lose that fast. So that's basically what the death race is like, you don't know what you're going to be doing. You show up, and they tell you to do things, and you just keep doing them until they tell you that it's over. There is no definite start time. There is no definite end time. It's only over when Joe DeSena says it's over. And usually that's after the majority of the people have dropped out, and there's only about 10% left.
That's amazing. So basically it's free labor.
Yes. Well, it has been said that this race is like, Joe's like Huck Finn or, Tom Sawyer. He's like, painting the fence is fun. Right? And he has us working on his farm, building rock walls. We built a stairway up to the top of his mountain. One year he had them lay a foundation for one of his greenhouses. So a little bit like free labor, but splitting wood is an all-time favorite in the death race too. That you have a pile taller than you of wood that takes, 7 or 8 hours to split. And each person that has that has wood for the winter.
That's amazing. So basically, he's like Mr. Miyagi, and all of you guys are like the Daniel disciples. So that's kind of
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, just to kind of piggyback a little bit more too. I mean, obviously, this death race sounds like something that's a little bit different than obviously the Spartan races that you discussed prior. But if someone is interested and they want to, get involved in these races, and you were talking about, well, there's so many obstacles with the sprint and so many during the beast and so on. Can you talk about how like, are all the obstacles the same? How do you guys come up with these obstacles? Do they vary per location or per race? Are they pretty standard?
Yeah, it's pretty standard for the set distances. So the obstacles that you see at the sprint here in Massachusetts will be the same that you see in California. The super adds a few new obstacles, and then the beast adds a few new obstacles too. But they're pretty consistent across the globe in terms of what the obstacles are at the sprint, the super, and the beast.
Can you provide some examples, like besides the? I know there's the wall. I mean, we talked about that.
Yep. There's the wall, monkey bars, and there's various iterations of the monkey bars. So they all have names, but it's, the names don't really indicate what they look like. But, so you have the standard monkey bars, then they have one that it's like a rotating bar that has handles, and you kind of go through it this way and it rotates on you. Very challenging. Sometimes they have ropes hanging that you have to kind of climb through. They have one that's called the Irish table. It's a table that's above your head and you have to get up on top of it, but there's nothing underneath it for you to kind of kick your feet against. So you have to kind of do like a muscle up to get on top of it, which a lot of people can't do. And so that's always a struggle. Ken had mentioned the wall traverse, where you're stuck on a wall, kind of like rock climbing, and you have to traverse across the wall. Spear throw is an all-time favorite. It's literally a spear and we have to throw it into a target. I should also mention that if you miss any of these obstacles or are unable to complete any of these obstacles, for the stadium, it's 15 burpees, but for all the other races, it's 30 burpees that you have to do.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that, but because I didn't want to discourage it. I mean, I did. There was like 2 obstacles that I like. The spear throw, I missed that, so there was 15 burpees right there. But yeah, that was like the default. Okay, great job trying, but here's the penalty for not making it. But I didn't want to put that out there in the universe. Like, okay, hey, if all else fails, you got to do at least 15 burpees. But
yeah, we call that the burpee maker. Like the spear throw, it's probably the least physical, but it certainly most people miss it and end up doing burpees. So yeah.
So
yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean there's looking up, doing the research for this conversation that we're having, I found myself like just one click away from actually signing up for a couple races. It's like, because I do have friends that they will travel. They'll do the long weekend. They'll do the 3 races, the trifecta over a weekend, and they'll make a fun, make an event out of it. But I encourage everybody to, like what we're talking about, just give the experience a chance, try it out, get off the couch, baby steps, start with a jog around the block, and then work your way up. And like you said, I mean, there's plenty of guidance that's out there as far as being able to prepare you for an event like this. And all people, all ages, shapes, and sizes that were participating in these things. And I'm not saying, get yourself ready for the death race, but the stadium was a great start, and it definitely opened my eyes to, the fun that you have and the challenges that you can put your body through. So, like I said, I was just one click away from, You know,
Do it, Tim. Do it.
yeah.
Next time, don't
We'll
be
see.
such a chicken. Press the button.
That boy.
I was just doing my research. I was like, I'm getting sidetracked here. I'm not here to
Stay
sign up. I'm
focused.
here to
Stay
research
focused, yeah.
Spartan. Yeah.
We tried to sign my son up. I have a 6-year-old, and he, is super active and very loves to climb on things and loves to run around, but he does not like to get dirty. So we were telling him about it, and he had a meltdown. Like, please don't do it. Please don't do it. I'm like, okay. So apparently I need to throw my kid in the mud a little bit more before I get him going. But I thought it was phenomenal that they are doing races for even children, because obviously we're seeing the stats about obesity and our youth athletes or youth kids, so it's just like, I find that phenomenal. But one thing, too, we talk so much about the racing. We're talking a lot about the training, and I do want to talk to you about, being a professor. But before we go into that, one other question that I know we're going to get, or that I have actually had people ask me, is how do you plan your nutrition when you're going to be doing these endurance type runs, for example? Because it's not like you're going to sit down and have a meal when you're running 100 miles. So how do you plan for that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to plan. That's the key. So, normally if it's the 100-mile races usually start really early in the morning. So, the meal the night before is the most important, and then we get up at least at the latest 2 hours ahead of the race and have a little bit of carbohydrate to kind of top off the tank, so to speak. But it's really the day before that you really have to make sure the nutrition is dialed in. Most of these, the 100-mile races, they're long and you burn through a lot of carbohydrate. But some of the shorter races, like half marathons and marathons, where you're running harder and you're burning even more carbohydrate, I make sure on those days, like the days before, my breakfast and my lunch are really heavily loaded with carbohydrates, and then the dinner is a little bit lighter, and then a light carbohydrate snack in the morning for those types of races. For the ultras, I just kind of eat my normal meal and try not to stray too far from it. With the ultras, you're running at a much lower intensity. Like a marathon might run at about 80% of my max, and an ultra I'm running closer to 60% of my max. So I'm using a little bit more fat, less carbohydrate, and they have food out in the courses so that you're able to, I kind of keep track of, the amount of time that I've been out there and kind of my effort with my heart rate watch. And, so I have an idea of how much I need to kind of refuel. Again, it's mostly carbohydrates. Sometimes throw in a little bit of protein on those longer races. Number one, for the satiety, but number two, you're going for so long, you're actually going to start using protein as a fuel, and you don't want that to be coming from your muscles. So you make sure you get a little bit in it, but you do have to think about it. You do plan for it. I carry a cheat sheet with me on my 100-mile races that remind me that, all right, at this aid station, you should probably grab this amount of food to kind of, replenish what you just burned through.
I can't even imagine your recovery after that. I mean, are you just done and take a couple weeks off, or are you one of those
so good.
You take a day or two and that's it?
Feels so good when you stop. I tell my students, it's like hitting yourself in the head with a hammer. It feels good when it stops, but it's, yeah, you are pretty beat up after it. Getting up from the chair there's always a little bit of grunting and groaning. Walking down the stairs, you're holding onto the railing with your life depended on it. But we try to get back into it. We don't necessarily train right after it, but we try to get back into some form of physical activity, start moving around. I find that the more you just sit around, the worse it gets. So get up off your butt and move around, and some foam rolling, stretching, anything like that just helps you make you feel better. Even though physiologically there's still some recovery that needs to take place, but the low level of activity is not going to impair that. It's going to actually help promote it.
So let me ask you, I mean, that's a lot of great information, when it comes to, I mean, it's not information I'm going to use anytime soon, but it really gives you some insight on what it takes to actually do those things and to actually look at recovery. But I want to ask you this now, and just to transition a little bit, when you've been in this industry for a long time, not just for what we're talking about with the Spartan races and the endurance running, but you're an academic. And I don't know, do you prefer to be known more as an academic or somebody who's been involved with Spartan and endurance racing and running? I'm just curious now about how you prefer to be known in this industry, as an academic or somebody that's okay. I've got people moving in off the couch.
It's a little bit of both. As far as an academic, I love teaching. I love being a professor. I'm not heavy into research. I'm more into the practical side of it. So, I even at the school, I work with the athletes as part of our strength and conditioning program. But I also, I love working with people. I love ripping people off the couch, so to speak. I love helping, people enjoy a physically active lifestyle. Love helping trainers, get better at their job. So I don't consider myself really lean on any one of those. I love all of it. So that doesn't really answer your question, Ken, but
it's all right. So for those of you watching us here on Random Fit, I mean, it's Wendy Batts, myself, and we have a special guest here, Dr. Jeff Godin, and we're talking about Spartan racing, endurance racing, as well as now we're talking about fitness education. Now, you're talking about practically applying and being a part of all these different aspects of fitness and education, and you've been doing this for a very, very long time. I mean, can you tell? And you mentioned part of your recovery, you're doing some foam rolling after your race. Now, foam rolling, when we all got started in this industry, was not a thing, right? So, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the industry when you first got into education? Because you teach a lot of different courses. Just to read out, you got weight training, functional anatomy. Functional anatomy wasn't a thing when 20 years ago when it comes to the educational process. Strength conditioning, testing and prescription, which I remember taking that in school. But what are some of the things that you're teaching now that you wish you were able to teach 15, 10 years ago even?
Yeah, it's really the strength and conditioning stuff. When I was an undergraduate I went to Bridgewater State here in Massachusetts. It was a great program, but it was the focus was more on the clinical aspects of it. They always talking about the ACSM certification was the primary one that they talked about. I had, no one even mentioned the National Strength and Conditioning Association. I don't even think I really knew that there was the opportunity to become a strength and conditioning coach, because that was the real reason that I got into the field of exercise science. Was, I love training as an athlete, and I wanted to get better as an athlete, and I wanted to really understand the best way to train to be a better athlete. And I took one course in strength training at Bridgewater, and it was actually a master's course that I took as an undergraduate. But other than that, they didn't mention the NSCA. They didn't mention that this was a potential career path. And it wasn't until I was working in Boston at the Boston Athletic Club, and I see this guy walking through the weight room. He has Cam Neely with him. He has Randy Burridge with him, right? Some old school Boston great hockey players. And I'm like, what's this guy doing here with them? And he's training them. I'm like, how does he get to train them? And I don't. Come to find out, it's Mike Boyle.
Yeah.
I went on to get my master's degree, and as part of my master's degree, I went to I did my internship with him when he was at BU, which was a great opportunity. Really opened up my eyes to the field of strength and conditioning, what it really was like, to work with athletes in that type of environment, not just one-on-one. But so at that point, I came to a crossroad where I was like, do I continue on this path as a strength coach, or do I go on to get my doctorate? And at the time, I had an opportunity, had a fellowship, and he's going to have everything paid for. So I was like, man, I'm going to just go for the PhD. With the PhD, like, you can do anything. Like, you can teach, you can do research, you can still work with people, so it just opened up a lot of doors for me. But that's probably the biggest thing.
So when, you obviously went through, and you're taking us through your journey, And, obviously you started out as a personal trainer, working in the industry, then the strength coach. So how did you become a professor? Was it something that you applied for? Did they reach out to you? So how did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so it's weird. Sometimes the things just get in alignment and things happen. But I had in high school, I had a knee injury. And then years later, my knee was still bothering me. So I had another surgery, and I had to get a knee brace made for myself. And so I had to pick it up at this city in Massachusetts called Fitchburg. And I remember driving into Fitchburg. It's Fitchburg actually is the second hilliest city in the country, believe it or not. And it's here in Massachusetts. But it was coming down from, I was on top of one of the hills, kind of looking into the city. It was fall time. There was a lot of foliage, a lot of color. And I'm familiar with the state college system in Massachusetts. And I knew there was a school here at Fitchburg. I knew it was small. I was like, man, this would be a great place to be able to teach. I'm like, I love the look of the city. I love the feel of it. I love just it's kind of outdoorsy. There's mountains around it, hills. I was like, that's great. And that was like before I was finishing my degree. So once I finished up my degree, I'm looking for places to teach. I was looking in Colorado. I was looking anywhere. We always loved the mountains. So, that's why Colorado was our first choice. But then I saw this opportunity at Fitchburg, and it was really like the ideal type of position, because as much as I love teaching, I like to also keep my hands in it, so to speak. And I think that makes me a stronger professor too, because I'm doing some of the things that, my students will be doing as a career. So if I'm more familiar with the environment and the profession, I think I can be a better teacher. But so the opportunity was to be a halftime professor, and halftime they were building out this brand new recreation center that included a 3,000 square foot fitness center, and so it's going to be the fitness director, and I was also going to be the strength coach. And so I was like, man, that's the ideal position. I get to do everything that I love. So then slowly over time, when I applied for it, pretty rigorous interview process. I got offered the position. I was like, yeah, this place is for me. And I've been there for, it's going to start my 23rd year.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So yeah. And I can, attest to that. I also teach. I teach for a university, this Cal U in Pennsylvania, and we're actually merging on July 1st will be known as Penn West, and the same type of thing. But my background was because of the NASM courses and them embedding the curriculum into their, or our curriculum and methodologies into their actual program. And so it's been phenomenal. And, when you can actually talk about it, you apply it, and you've been there, it does, you kind of, it's hard not to be excited about it when you're teaching it to your students and see that light bulb go off. And It's like, you know what? I've been there. I did my job. And then they move on, and they are usually pretty successful. So
excellent. Yes.
All right. Well, I think, you've got a lot of great information, a lot of history that you shared with us today on this episode. So if there's anything is there anything you want to leave as far as a last, message you want to leave our listeners and our viewers, as far as, whether it's academics, education, getting off the couch, running, racing, Spartan, and you've got so much in your background. I know you have a lot more to share, but what message would you love to leave our listeners when it comes to all that you've done and all that you've seen and what it takes to be a better human?
Yeah, I think it comes down to just living a physically active lifestyle and finding something that you enjoy to do and sticking with it and following through with it. When I talk to a lot of people about the 100-mile races, and they scratch their head and like, I could never do that. And I always tell my students, I'm like, when I was sitting in your seats and my professor was telling me about the 10-mile runs that he was doing, I never imagined that it was possible. And then now here I am standing up in front of you talking about running 100-mile races. So, you just never know. Always have an open mind. Anything is possible. You can learn anything that you really put your mind to, and you can get better at anything. And just as an example of this, I took my first ballet class on Wednesday with my wife. She'd been going to a one-on-one instructor, and she'd been talking to me about it. I'm like, you know what, that sounds like it might be good for my mobility, good for my stability, might help me a little bit with my ice hockey. I've never danced in my life, never done anything like that, but I took my first ballet class and got a little bit better by the end of it. And I think if I continue with it, I might be the next Mikhail Burstengoff. Who knows?
We will see you at the Nutcracker. I love it. Well, Dr. J, I just want to say thank you too. I know you're an extremely busy man, and the fact that you made time to come onto our show and talk about all you've done to our listeners, it really means a lot. So I know on behalf of myself and Ken, we just want to say thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. If I can't make time to do these types of things, then I'm not any good. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate
that. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Dr. J, thank you so much again for being a part of this episode. I know this is one of those that we're definitely going to make sure that everybody we know watches and gets motivated enough. Go to the website, look up your local Spartan Race and see what it is that you can do to challenge yourself moving on. Because like you said, you just got to keep moving. And I believe that 100%. So thank you for sharing that. So thank you, everybody, for listening to us here on Random Fit. We just got done talking to Dr. Jeff Godin. So if you like what you heard, please share with your friends. But follow, subscribe if there's anything else that you'd like to hear from us here on Random Fit. On behalf of Wendy, Bats, and I, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, take care and be well.